All right, everybody, welcome back to another Corona Geek. We've got a special edition today. We're kicking off a new series of developer conversations, and joining us today is Tony Godfrey from Shark Apps LLC.
Shark Apps.
Shark Apps. Your game uses stock assets, so I think we should talk about that a little bit.
Right. So you're talking about Hoppy Naut. That's the app that I just released in at the end of January. And what I'm using for images in there are a set of assets called the Platformer Asset Pack from Kenny, who is a gentleman in the Netherlands who basically builds all of these images, which look great. They're cute. And then he releases them to public domain. They're licensed CC0, which means that he doesn't claim any kind of copyright for them. He puts them out there for developers to use as they will. So I decided to pick those up and see what I could build out of them. I get so excited when I see these things that he releases. He does them over time, and you get to see different packs come out at different times. And I think I must have spent, a couple of years while I was working on my first application or my first game that I released, looking at him releasing these things going, oh, I could make a great game if I, just use something like that. And so I finally got to the point where I was like, I've finished, my work on my last project, and I'm, it's going to be a while before I go back and update that again. So what is my next thing going to be? And I said, let me just see how quickly I can get an application put together, how quickly, cheaply I can put together an app and get it out there, and have it be something that is sort of an example of something that I can maybe build on, going forward. So that's kind of how it came about, and I've gotten a lot of questions about, are you going to update those graphics and make them, something different or unique? And the answer is no. I'm going to keep using those because they're so easy to work with, and inexpensive.
Well, I was playing the game this morning. I knew we were going to have this call, and I wanted to make sure that I had explored all the pieces of it. And there's never a point where it feels like it's lacking in any way. I mean, there were setting screens, there were screens for in-app purchase, there were credits. There were I went from multiple levels. I mean, it just didn't seem like there was a gap where I felt like, it seemed like there was something missing.
Right, that was the idea, to build out a full-featured, game application, much like you would see, out on the App Store put out by some of the big guys like Ketchup. They all have kind of the same formula. They have in-app purchases, they have ads, they have a way to disable the ads, and other various settings in there for your audio volumes and that sort of thing. So that's what this game really was supposed to be from the beginning, and I wanted to do it within a short time frame. I'm doing all of this work myself, so I'm doing all of the development. Any kind of artwork tweaks or anything that I did do to it, I had to do myself. So putting in all of the in-app purchase stuff into all of the 3 different dashboards for Amazon, Google, and the iTunes store, I had to do all of that myself. And so now I'm in the middle of, now that I've actually done all of this and released it, now I'm in the middle of doing the marketing campaign by myself with some help. By hiring, outside companies.
So you mentioned just a moment ago in-app purchase and ads, and I noticed that in the game you have a coin system that people can then use to on in-game stuff. So talk a little bit about that process and some of the highlights of that.
Well, yeah, sure. So the idea is that there's a set of 30 characters that you can have in the game total. Actually, 5 of those you can only get via a 99-cent in-app purchase, and the rest of the 25 you can get completely for free. So that means you can visit 5 of the 6 different worlds for free in the game and acquire all 25 of those free characters. And the way you do that is by collecting coins, and coins can be collected by jumping around in the game and collecting them. And they can also be earned by watching ads. So the ad system in Hoppy Naut is completely opt-in. You don't get an ad shoved in your face automatically. You have to press a button that says, I want these coins. And then when you press that button, you get an ad, and then you get the coins at the end of that. So you can build up a pretty good amount of coins in a short amount of time if you do that. Otherwise, if you don't want to watch ads at all, you can still earn those coins, but you have to work a little bit harder and play more rounds of the game.
That seems like a fair way to implement things these days. I mean, I've seen so many apps that as soon as you open the app, bam, there's an ad in your face, and then you're like, wow, that's really a terrible user experience, right? I mean, it sours the relationship right from the beginning. Like I know you have an option in the game in Hoppy Naut where you can either go back and start that level over again without losing your progress. I think, and then was there an option even to go forward? I think.
Yeah, so that's another coin purchase that you can make. So if your round ends, you have the choice to spend 100 of those coins that you've collected and continue from that point that you were at. So that's how you can get higher scores in the game. It's really hard to get far in that game, but if you use the continues, you can get pretty far.
I also noticed, speaking of which, you're talking about getting a distance in the game, and it's a distance runner, right? I mean, we're talking about it's a platformer, side-scroller, distance runner. Anyway, you seem to randomize the platforms, the obstacles and stuff like that. So talk about that a little bit. Was there any kind of challenges you ran into there, and how'd you overcome them?
Well, it's interesting. So when I started kind of prototyping this game in my head, how it was going to work, I said, I really want it to be random. I don't want it to be like Geometry Dash or some other Mr. Jump where you got to do the same thing over and over again. And I know for me, when I feel like I've done it for the 10th time and I know I have to go through that exact same sequence again, I just like, forget it. I'm not going to do it. And I put it down and I walk off and do something else. So I decided at the beginning, I want it to just be different every time. And so I felt like the big challenge there was going to be, how can I make sure that if it's random every time, it's going to be possible for the character to, make all of these jumps that the randomizer has created. So I put in, just some boundaries in the logic that does the randomness about, how far apart the gaps can be, how far up the next level can be, and, where the coin placement should be so that it's reachable but not too easy to reach and that sort of thing. It's interesting because that was basically the first thing I worked on after I got, the character moving and that sort of thing, was making sure that worked right, because I figured if I can't get that to work right, the whole game's over, because I'm just not going to want to do it. Different. And then another thing that you might not notice unless you played the game for a while and gotten farther is as you get farther, you'll notice different things start to pop into the environment as well. So you'll enter a town where you'll see buildings that were constructed, and you can hop up on top of the roofs and get a bunch of coins that are up there. And then still farther, you'll see the distance between like some of the spikes will decrease. So now you've got to be a little bit more careful when you're jumping in between those spikes. And then eventually, once you pass, I think 3 different towns, you get to a castle where there's just a ton of coins at the end of that, and it's got a different kind of castles feel to it.
And were all those, the castles and the towns, were they all part of the original pack?
Yes, sir.
Really?
I don't know about the original pack, but I bought his deluxe thing, which had everything in it. And so I've like I said, I've been downloading along the way. So I've got not only what he's put out there, but everything else that I've found that he's released over the years.
Gotcha.
So I have all of that stuff, and I've tried to make as good use of it as possible, but there's still a ton of room for expansion there. And so I've got, just a laundry list of updates that I've got to work on now for the next year or two.
Well, I tell you what, one of my favorite features is you've got a hop, a double hop, and then you do and then you allow a float. And so I really like the float. I mean, there are times when 1 or 2 hops are appropriate, but then there are times when you're just like, I just know I'm not going to make that, and you can hold and float the character across. So was there any particular challenges in implementing that?
Well, it's interesting because the very first playable build that I had of this did not have the float ability in it, and so I had my partner in the company trying this out. He doesn't live in the area. He's up in Washington, and he just kind of tests things out for me and lets me know how things look to him and, how they're working. And he said, it needs to float. You need to be able to float. I feel like I'm playing Mario, but I can't float. So I put floating in, and it turns out a lot of people really like that. It's an important feature. I feel like, though, now that's just kind of a scratch the surface of what I can do there, because floating is one thing, but I think further down the road, what I want to introduce is some power-ups that will allow the float to become something maybe even more exciting than just floating down.
Oh wow, yeah, maybe even some jetpack action, or maybe some, yeah, so that would be cool. I think
Yeah.
that would add a whole nother level to it, especially if um, you could use your coins maybe to achieve those too, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So there's the idea of as I build this out even further to be able to buy packs from the same store where you get the different knots, and maybe just swipe over to the other side and get packs that boost your performance, maybe make you faster, maybe make them jump higher, that kind of stuff. But there's a lot to consider in terms of how the gameplay works with all that. So I've got to kind of carefully plan on how that all works.
I noticed that you added in a like a holiday theme. So we're coming up
Yeah.
on Valentine's Day, and now when the character runs, these little hearts kind of emit from
Right.
his feet. So
Yes.
is that something that you hard coded in, that you
Yeah,
had to push a release for every time, or?
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of a freak out moment for me. It was like, oh my gosh, I've released this at the end of January, but February 14th is coming up, and I know people are going to be, looking for Valentine's apps. So I did what little I could to put something in there that indicated Valentine's Day was happening. But what I have in there now is a little, just a function that checks to see for certain events, and the events are defined by time period. So between February 1st and February 15th, you'll get those little hearts, and then they'll disappear until the next February 1st comes around.
Oh, okay. So it's baked right into the app. So you basically, once you get all your holidays in there, you wouldn't even have to touch it anymore.
That's the idea. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Build it out as we go, and then keep it in there and make sure it all keeps working.
Right.
Yeah.
So I noticed that also you have Google Play services. You've got you've got all the Game Center and all these other things. What was the driving force in putting those things in?
Well, I noticed a couple of things. I noticed I guess the main thing is that on social media, it turns out there are people that are looking for games that connect up to Game Center or Game Center on iOS, because they want, I don't know, I guess they like being on these leaderboards. I think in some cases, I think it's Amazon Game Circle, where you earn experience points, and I guess your gamer character grows in experience or level or something as you get more experience points. So I don't really understand all of it, but my understanding is that people get something out of this, and they go out specifically looking for apps that have these features so that they can play them. So I wanted to put it in. I wanted to understand how it worked also. So that was a big one for me, is how does all this stuff work? How do you make it work? And it's actually pretty interesting. One thing I'm not taking advantage of right now are challenges, which are, you complete it, maybe a series of different tasks, and then you've completed that particular challenge. And I don't think all of the gamers circles support them, but some of the game networks support them, but some of them do.
Yes, but it's interesting that you say that other people are looking for these.
Well, I think you and I are in the generation of, I don't want anybody to know what I'm doing. Right? I turn off all my privacy settings on Xbox so nobody can see what I'm watching on Netflix. Everything I can turn off, I've got turned off. But I think the generation behind us, they just don't care.
Right.
They want to do everything on Facebook, and they want everybody to see their score and everything else. So, they're the ones that are using these apps. So I might as well cater to their interests, right?
That's an interesting point. So let's talk about the marketing aspects of things then, because you're building something, that you probably would enjoy playing yourself, but you're also trying to tap into a market. So tell me about some of the things that you've done in order to market this app, because I know that it seems like you had that in mind right from the beginning.
I did have it in mind right from the beginning. I would say I didn't execute well right from the beginning. Keep in mind that this is the second app that I've released. The first app that I released is called Sea Animal City, and that I released back in December of 2014, when I knew nothing about anything. And it was just my plan was to see if I could successfully get through the App Store approval process. So, I with this one, I said I had done a lot of research during the 2 years it took me to develop that first game. And I realized, marketing begins before you even start coding the app. You have to make sure that there is a market to begin with. And so a lot of it has to do with researching where is your audience going to come from, and how are you going to get them engaged at an early enough point where later on down the road, that kind of will have snowballed into a big enough audience to, send a notification out to have them come out and, download your game when it's ready. And I would say I still haven't quite figured it out. I think it's a tough nut to crack, and I think the people that are successful at doing that are successful at making money with their apps. I'm not yet. I'm still learning how that works. So the first thing that I really did was I set up all my marketing sites. I got my website for Hoppy Naut, the domain name hoppynaut.com registered. I set up my WordPress page on there. I put I've already had a dev blog on my main company account, but I started putting some Hoppy Naut posts in my blog there that nobody reads. I set up a Facebook page. I set up. I went to Reddit and I posted in their Android gaming forum and their Play My Game forum, in the game dev forums, any chance I had, for screenshot Saturdays and that sort of thing. I set up, I made sure my Twitter account was working, and I was sending out updates on my Twitter when I had something to say about Hoppy Naut. But I mean, compared to some of the people that really know what they're doing, I'm like amateur hour here, right? I just didn't. I was so busy with coding, right? It's one guy doing all this stuff that I just stuck on the coding, and I did, a lot of that during the development time. And so I think my social audience suffered a little bit during that time frame. So at the end of this whole thing, I went to Steve P. Young from App Masters and said, what can you guys help me with here? And they did a great job. Steve knows what he's doing. He's been doing this for a long time, and he has a whole podcast around it that I listen to religiously as well. And he was able to at least get me some exposure. What he was able to do with what little I had given him was really quite amazing.
I really like Steve because he gets it. He understands what the media wants in terms of having content to push out to an audience, and he also understands what developers, where they're at, what they're looking for, and that sort of thing. And he really tries to marry that up. And so when he sees something, he says, what, I think this would be a really good fit for, and then he leans into that. And
that's right. Yeah, he knows where to go. Like, I don't even know half of these places that he knows about, right?
Right.
But it's great because it seems like those are where, the audience seems to be.
Yeah.
So
yeah, too many times the advice is, well, get yourself a big list of whatever, and then just start emailing, right? And it's time consuming and has low value to the recipient, and it seems like he is more involved in personal relationships where he can reach directly out to one person and say, hey, I think this game would be good for your audience.
Yeah, and he's done that on a number of occasions. He sends me links to, hey, I got your Hoppy Naut application up on this page, and some really great placements, I think.
Yeah.
In fact, a couple of times it's kind of embarrassing because see Hoppy Naut in there with the stock graphics, and there's all these other premium games listed in there. It's like, yeah. So now I'm looking to expand. I would say, like I said, Steve did a great job with what he did, and I had a great launch day. I had, I think, over 1,800 App Store views on this is just the iOS store on launch day, and I think I'm up to somewhere around 500 or so iOS users with the app right now. So that's better than I could have definitely done just on my own. There's just no way I would have been able to get the word out far enough to that. So the other thing I did was I did a press release. I localized the app into 10 different languages. That's probably something that nobody even knows about, but
I saw it in your release notes for the recent update, and I was really impressed by that. You have it in Russian and all. I mean, I don't even remember all the different languages.
Yeah, Korean, Japanese, Portuguese. I mean, it's amazing. I worked with a company called iBabylon.com to help me do all of that. They were really easy to work with. I used Chris built a module for Corona. Chris Byerly wrote a module called mod_localization, which helped me out tremendously as well. I kind of used that and I tweaked it so that I could use Apple's regular strings file format. And then they also have this thing for handling plurals that I also had to add into the module. But anyway, using that, I was able to pass this stuff off very easily to iBabylon, and then they were able to hand me back the translations and got all that done. So that helped. bring more market exposure.
What was the? I mean, if you don't mind sharing, what was the cost on that? How was it? Did you find that it was affordable for iBabylon?
Definitely. So I think for the amount of text that I have in Hoppy Naut, and there's a lot of it's just error messages and things you probably won't ever see.
Hopefully not, right?
Yeah, let's hope. But I think when all was said and done with all of that, I also had them write the app description. They came up with a better app description than I came up with originally, which they also localized. And then all of the in-app purchases, they all have descriptions. All of the leaderboard have descriptions, and all of the achievements have a name and a description. So all of these things, I had them localized, and I think it came out to somewhere around $1,500, $1,600 for the whole thing, which I considered a bargain.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to learn Russian anytime soon, so yes.
Absolutely not. And not only that, but they were just very easy to work with in terms of once I had put in the strings that they had handed back, I went through my screenshots and gave them all of the screenshots for the different languages, and then they had their localizers actually verify that things looked right, and if they didn't, they sent me back some tweaks and that sort of thing. So it was an iterative process that I started fairly late in the game, but was able to get completed before actually the release date.
Well, I now I know your secret to the review, because not the review, the app description, because when I read through it, I read through it this morning, and I was like, wow, he's a good writer. This is like no. You
should have seen the first one. It was awful. It was just jump on platforms and collect coins. I mean, it was just really boring. And
they painted a visual picture in my head when I was reading it. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good game.
Yeah. So I think that's another key time saver for someone who's trying to develop a lot on their own and trying to do as much of it on their own. Is those guys really did a good job helping out with that stuff. So they also did the press release. And I just got a tremendous amount of emails from the press release alone. People who wanted to, of course, help me market my app were the number one emails that I got. But I know that means that the word got around to the different publications. So that was what was important. So doing a press release, I think, is important. That ended up going to prmac.com. And now what I'm working on is more ads. So I'm looking at how I can get some ads on places like Touch Arcade and Pocket Gamer, 148 apps, all these guys. And there's this site called Buy Sell Ads that makes that easy, where you can select all of the different places where you want, and it shows you how many impressions, and you upload the assets you need to make the ad appear and the links that you want it to go to. And it seems like it's a pretty straightforward process. And it's supposedly going to give me I don't know how many millions. Probably, I think when I totaled up the buy that I'm looking at right now, it's going to be over 2 million ad impressions. So sounds pretty good. I don't know how it's going to work yet, though.
Yeah. And my question there would be, are you going to do any kind of Facebook targeting, any kind of stuff like that?
Yeah, that's so I've heard that people are having relatively good success there. I haven't. I poked around on the site, but I haven't launched anything yet. Okay. I launched a Twitter ad campaign, not for Hoppy Naut, but for my previous application about 6 months ago, and frankly I'm not sure it actually even worked because I never saw any ads, and I never saw any real bump in traffic from that. So I'm not sure Twitter really works, or maybe I just did something wrong. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Do you how do you track your conversions? Or is there a place where you can say, hey, they clicked this special link and I saw how many clicks that link got?
Yeah, you can set it up that way. So in this buy sell ads place, one of the things that you can include in your link is some special strings or whatever you want, parameters that go on the end of the URL, so that if you send it to, for example, a web page that you can control, you can then track those. I didn't set any of that up. I'm just I'm mainly tracking what I see in terms of App Store views and Google Play Store views. That's really, and I'm trying to do some kind of time sequencing to see if I can figure out, did this ad really have any impact on the store or not? I don't really know. It's so probably not the best.
So there hasn't been a moment where you're like, I ran this ad, and the next day you wake up in the morning, you're like, wow, what happened?
No, no, definitely not. I don't think the only thing that's happened there is, the launch day. I had really, compared to my first app release where it was just basically silence, complete silence, I noticed a huge, huge bump in traffic there. And I attribute a lot of that to Steve, but I think a lot of it also came from just the press release.
Right. Okay. Well, as you were talking, two things came to mind. One is Eric Kincaid. I don't know if you've seen his. He did a talk for the Dallas Corona Meetup group, and he actually talked about his marketing efforts and what he did. And one of the things that he said, which you mirrored, was that he felt like he hadn't done as well as he could have. Because there were just mistakes made. There were timing issues, things that he didn't consider, and all that kind of stuff like that. So it's definitely a learning process. I think you'll have all this information, and now you can just apply that to the next time that you go out and
right. I'm still learning right now. Like I'm just today, as I'm going through this buy sell ad site, I'm learning about how I want to do this for the next time, so I can maybe get it done a little bit sooner and have it all pop out on launch day. Right. I think that would have been ideal, was to have a lot of this stuff starting on launch day and then, kind of have it go over the next 30 days.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And then the other thing that comes to mind is your game trailer. Did you make that yourself, or did you have somebody else make that?
I did.
You made that yourself.
So it's really not that amazing, because I think it's
fantastic.
So iMovie has the ability for you to make these little, they're all templated. So you can make it in iMovie, which I think saved me a ton of time and money as well.
Well, maybe
it's got to put in your clips.
Maybe it's because it's stock art that what you chose to do it almost had a parody to it. It almost seemed like it was humorous, right? Because there's a part there where the trailer is sort of dramatic, and it's got places where they pop, and there's like this, almost like this Batman style, like pow, pop, boom, and you're just like, you're like Hoppy Naut, it just seems funny, and so I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun actually making that trailer, because I tried different ones. There's different templates in there, like I said, and some of them just didn't fit at all, and so it was like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work. And then I came upon that particular template, and I started using it. It was just an instant fit. It's like, this is funny, and it's exciting, and I like the music in the background. And actually, that sort of influenced the way I took the music in the game as well. You'll notice a lot of the music in the game is that sort of jazzy spy music. And I was able to go to Pond 5 to get a lot of those resources, because I'm not a musician. I can play the keyboard, but I did a lot of my own music for the first app, but it was very time consuming. And so I said, this one, I'm just going to go and try and find somebody that knows what they're doing and get some music.
Well, you have a good ear then, because I did see in your credits that you went to Pond 5. But again, as I'm playing through the game, there wasn't a moment where anything was, broke you out of the experience. Everything seemed to go together. All the sounds seemed to make sense. So good choices.
Yeah, the sound effects I actually did end up doing myself, and I did those just using GarageBand.
Oh, okay.
Different instruments in GarageBand, which was kind of neat. I think it's another time-saving tool, because you can make. There's a ton of tools out there for making sound effects. VFXR is one of my favorites, but with GarageBand, there's just a huge number of different sounds you can make with it, and so all of the sound effects pretty much that you hear in there are made out of GarageBand.
Well, you did an excellent job. Excellent job.
Thank you.
So what's next? What happens after this? You've got the app up. You're building in holiday themed accents and stuff like that. You said you've got some other ideas to maybe put in some power ups and stuff like that. What happens next?
So coming down the road, I've got the spring update, which will include some eggs coming in, and I'm not sure. I think those are probably going to be troublesome. Maybe not. Maybe they'll include some kind of coins inside of them. I don't really know, but I'm working on that right now. I've got a tvOS build that I'm working on, but I'm I want to put a beta out, but I'm blocked behind a Corona issue where the text isn't displaying properly when it wraps. Okay. So I'm trying to get some attention on that. But I want to learn how to use, if you've seen some of the tvOS apps, you've seen that it's possible to use your iPhone as a controller for those. And so I'm curious to figure out how that works exactly, because I've got the game actually working right now with game controllers, but I don't know how to make it work with like the iPhone as a controller. So I want to figure that out next.
So yeah, I was going to ask you if you were going to port it, and if you were going to support controllers, third-party controllers.
Yeah, there's already support for non-MFI controllers in there right now. So, if you have it on your Android device and you hook in an Xbox controller or whatever, it'll work.
Okay.
And you can navigate around all the menus and everything just fine. But on tvOS, I want to be able to use MFI controllers. So I don't know, like, for example, if that controller that you have there would actually work right now or not. It might, because it works with the Apple TV remote.
Right.
So I haven't gone out and splurged on a real controller for the Apple TV yet.
Okay. Well, I would definitely beta test for you. So just let me know what you want to do there.
I will send you a tvOS app and figure out how we can get it on your tvOS.
Yeah, that would be great. That'd be a lot of fun. We've got. I'd have to go back and check. I think Corona Canon, which is the sample app that Sergey Lerg updated and put out. I'm pretty sure it does run on tvOS, and then I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, I'd have to go back and look at the controller to see if we have controller support in there. That might be a good example for you to draw from.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, if it, a lot of the controller stuff I wrote back when I was first experimenting with the Ouya, and so it's just using the access controls. So
okay,
I used that old code and it seems to be working. I just had to make it not freak out when you were using the remote control.
Right. Yeah. It's a completely different way of doing things for sure. So, all right. Well, this is great. I appreciate you being on with us and spending some time and sharing some resources there. And we've got some great things with iBabylon and the mod localization and some great tips for marketing and all that kind of stuff. And where can they find Hoppy Naut?
Hoppynaut.com is the place to go.
Download it. It's a free game, and have fun.
All right. Thanks for doing these, Charles. I'm really looking forward to seeing the rest of the guys talk.